The session is now starting. Passive listening mode has been enabled for all participants. This workshop is being recorded and may be shared with others. The participant list and chat are private, meaning only the speakers and moderator can see the messages and participants' names. Log out at any time if you do not wish to continue under these conditions. Welcome to a special edition of our mindsON RBQM workshop series hosted by Cyntegrity's My RBQM Academy. I'm Tamara, the Academy's Operations Manager, and I'm happy to have you with us today. Clinical R&D due diligence, detecting execution risk, data integrity issues, and hidden misconduct signals is the topic of our 60-minute workshop today. And we will combine theory with interactive brainstorming and live polls to involve everyone and foster perspective exchange. I will now briefly introduce our speakers and start by welcoming our guest, Shinas Vakaria, Vice President Asia Pacific Region for ADAMAS Clinical Quality Consulting. Shinas brings 28 years of experience in clinical research with a strong focus on GCP and quality management system consulting and audits. Over the past 2 decades, she has built and scaled 2 GXP audit firms in India and founded a diploma course in clinical research in collaboration with St. Xavier's College in Mumbai. Shinas has conducted more than 200 GCP audits globally and led numerous process optimization projects, including innovative approaches using advanced analytics in quality management. Joining her is our CEO and founder, Artem Andrianov. He brings over 25 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry and is a leading expert in RBQM and clinical data quality. With a background that includes a PhD in mathematical modeling and an executive MBA, Artem specializes in data-driven risk management in clinical trials. He co-founded Cyntegrity in 2013 to advance RBQM and brings the data analytics and central monitoring lens. Together, the two perspectives, Q&A and analytics, are exactly what good diligence needs. Okay, now before we start, a brief introduction to the handling of this webinar application for all who are new to this workshop. Later in the session, I will activate a toolbar for our brainstorming activity. You will see the toolbar on the left side. Click on the icon with the mug and pens, select the T in the box and open a text box. Click anywhere on the whiteboard, type in your ideas, click OK to submit, and your input will appear anonymously on our whiteboard. Please feel free to share your questions and comments. In the chat box on the right, select the tab Moderators, and we'll be happy to address your questions at the end of the session. And in a moment, I will also share some quick troubleshooting tips for the audio connection in the chat. To modify your settings, click the gear icon in the top right corner and scroll down until you see microphone. There you can choose from a list of connected audio devices. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention. Artem, we can start, and the stage is yours, please.
Thank you, Tamara, and welcome everybody who joined us today. So we have quite a busy schedule for the next 60 minutes. So first, we are going to discuss why pharma is kind of buying so many biotech companies, why everybody is on acquisition rally, so to say, in the modern world. Why it happened suddenly, let's say, in the recent years, and particularly accelerates, as we will see. Then we're going to discuss some sort of a hidden truth, so to say, what data room usually forgets to mention, what due diligence forgets in the current world, and why it matters to think about a bit broader scope, let's say, in due diligence. Then we will go through certain framework, which we're happy to share with everybody to identify inherited risks from the clinical perspective. How to prepare, how to evaluate, so to say, the data quality, and form a kind of report out of it. Then we will share a couple of case studies, in fact, based on anonymized clinical trials, and demonstrate, in fact, how hidden risks were identified, and how this kind of created some sort of ripple effect for launch dates of these clinical trials. And then we will finish with questions and suggestions. It's kind of not a lecture. It's more interactive session. We are going to have some polls. We're going to have some whiteboard sessions. We're going to collect kind of your ideas and share these ideas with the community later on. It's a new, interesting, exciting topic, I believe, which is relevant for many, many pharma companies more and more now. And hopefully, yeah, we will all kind of benefit from the session. So with that, let me jump into the first slides, and in fact, yeah, hand over to Shenas and kind of exchange, so to say, the ideas here. Shenas, you might be muted.
Yes, I was. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Arthur. And welcome, everybody. All right. So during due diligence audits, we can see several blind spots which can arise. Now, those of you who have experienced the due diligence audits will agree that data rooms can be quite inundating, with volumes of data depending on the type and the size of companies that we are evaluating. And coupled to this is the pressure of time. In a certain time frame, one needs to actually go through volumes of documentation and make a decision, or come to a conclusion. And in this race, you come across certain misses. And what are those misses? So the most common blind spots that can occur include provenance gaps. What do we mean by provenance? Provenance means the ability to trace every data point back to its official source with the timestamp. And this, as we know, is fundamental to data integrity based on ICH E6R3 as well as the regulations, and it is fundamental to reliability of the clinical research. And in the data room, most of us, or most of the times, you are presented with clean summary tables. Now, these summary tables don't really give you the information on how the data, or what is the source of the data, where did this data come from, who entered the data, who changed the data, what are the timestamps, etc. And just reviewing these summary tables doesn't really give you the insights. And this could be one simple miss that one would have during due diligence audits or during due diligence in the data room. Another includes misconduct signals. So while you're reviewing the data, unless and until you drill down into the data, and we will see, later on in Artem's slides, you may not be able to identify patterns. You may not be able to identify, the recruitment speed. You know that, okay, certain number of patients have been recruited in X study, which is, the data is all there in your data room. But how and how fast were they recruited? What was behind the recruitment? Were there any outliers, etc. Those are the signals. If you just review the data in the data room, you might just miss them. Another is the inspection of exposure and the TMF completeness. So most of the times you're given access to the TMF, but unless and until, as I said, you drill down into each of the documents, you will not identify what you're missing. And similarly is the milestone realism. Reported timelines assume everything was held. You you don't know what were the issues with the study, and most of the times you request for all this data and they provide you this volumes of data in the data room, but it is imperative that you go through the data and identify this. Now, to do that manually is always a huge task. And Artem will show you, how we can use data analytics, how we can use system, how we can use power of, the updates that we have nowadays with different types of technology available, how we could use the technology to review all the data and to identify what we might have otherwise missed in the data room. Over to you, Artem.
Thank you, Shanaz. First, we need to understand why, at the end of the day, it started to become an important area. So for pharma in the modern world, just mergers and acquisitions is booming in the recent years. Just to put everything in perspective, so in 2024, it was kind of sleepy environment. Post-COVID environment, but M&A started to accelerate in 2025, with literally doubled in this year, and currently already in 2026 we see that it's accelerating. Even the first quarter with over $500 million already made in this year. The reason for that is actually quite kind of on the one hand side obvious, on the other hand side new. So many have heard about patent cliffs, but I would say it's a super patent cliff. Yeah. Why? In the near future, we expect about 200 very kind of large drugs to kind of the patent expiration for them, and 70 of them are blockbuster drugs. So companies like Merck with the Keytruda, who will kind of which is approximately a 30 billion drug, will lose their patent in the near future. BMS is kind of interesting. Almost a half of their revenues is in danger right now. And companies like Pfizer and the others are not exception. So it's kind of perfect storm situation in the pharma, which formed in the recent time, where this patent cliff became an issue. So, and therefore acquisition accelerates, and you could see also in the last acquisitions with J&J, who acquired Intra-Cellular Therapeutics, Novartis, Merck, they did the same. Pfizer recently acquired assets for Metsera, and actually there was a bidding war with Novo Nordisk, but in fact, kind of Pfizer has received a kind of a green light from the regulators. So that's the situation we face at the moment. Yeah, and that's why the mergers and acquisitions again accelerate particularly. And important to mention also that that in fact the risk is actually decides whether a deal will make or lose the money for pharma at the end of the day. So the hidden risks underneath is actually it's not the documents that usually presented. It's not the data which is pre-cleaned. And they could use a very simple analogy. Imagine a situation: you hire a person, for example, and you looked only on LinkedIn profile. This is already clean. This is already kind of prepared, versus a possibility to see a diary of a person. Yeah, so that's where you start noticing, for example, certain trends, certain kind of be much more informed about the decision. So why clinical due diligence would be a big as kind of assistant element in M&A overall? It's a new concept which is was introduced just recently, and Cyntegrity, ADAMAS, the other quality-oriented companies started to position themselves into this new world. And together with the financial due diligence, which happens literally traditionally, clinical due diligence has a lot of kind of advantages from the understanding of the data quality and what are behind, so to say, the documents that usually is presented. So when a company acquires, for example, a phase 2 or phase 3 asset, they're not only inheriting a promising molecule. Yeah, they're inheriting also data. They're inheriting every problem baked into the data. Yeah, they're inheriting actually certain potential issues or misconducts, or even in worst case, even fraud cases. And therefore, that might be very, very critical later on after acquisition happens, yeah, as it might also affect the reputation of the acquisitor. And it's very difficult to see, yeah, because data, as Shanaz mentioned, our data sets are enormous nowadays. Yeah, they're getting bigger and bigger. They're getting more complicated. We're packing now different combinations of EPROs, of EDC data, of lab data of various nature. Then, of course, genetic information more and more now. Wearables are becoming very trendy now. So again, the data sets themselves itself is actually enormous. And sellers, understandably, don't have, so they guard their confidential data literally like a dragon on a horde. Yeah, so they're very protective. Yeah, so this study performance is very difficult to understand. The whole process of M&A is very time boxed, so to say, and it's very, very limited. And therefore, from the perspective of the acquiring party, so to say, it's extremely difficult really to see any type of hidden cats in the sack, so to say, or mistrends, hidden timelines, which literally kind of affects maybe valuation of acquiring assets. So on the other side, again, there is an alternative nowadays. Again, an unbiased, customizable quality of clinical data report, which kind of presented for both parties by independent, for example, auditing company. Where the kind of the evidence about the data quality, reliability, regulatory compliance is presented in an unbiased way, transparent, showing the graded minor, major, and critical findings, which is, again, at the end of the day, could really become a basis for further discussion and negotiation. Okay, so from this perspective, I believe let us check it, so to say, what kind of well, what kind of most important areas you would see as, for example, in phase 2 or 3 clinical trial, where you would where you had in the past maybe the situations where you burned your fingers, and yeah, we would be happy to understand the experience of our audience today.
Yes, I can already see the votes coming in. Thank you all. Just wait a couple more seconds before we close this poll here. And there are multiple answers that you can select, not only one.
Yeah. So I believe it's important to mention that the poll is anonymous.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So be honest here, and
Good. Thank you all very much. And the results are presented on our screen now.
Yes. So as you can see in this poll, 32% of people have responded as vendor CRO oversight failures. 22.58% says TMF gaps and inspection findings. 19.35% says data integrity surfacing only after close. And 12.9% equivalent saying protocol deviations and milestones that were never realistic. What does this really tell us? It is telling us that yes, vendor oversight, CRO failures, data integrity, and TMF gaps, these are the big elephants in the room. In order for us, and this is true, and more often than not, more than the CRO. So when you have the data integrity issues surfacing after close, it actually also points a finger at the organizations and the sponsor and the CRO who are responsible for the data quality, who are responsible for ensuring that adequate quality control, adequate quality assurance systems should be in place so that these don't happen. And when data integrity surfaces only after close, that is when you actually know that your deal might actually fall through, because it and you will see in the later slides, how it can affect the timelines of launch, how it can affect the timelines of the deal, etc. So can we go to the whiteboard? I shall.
So just a
Right
moment.
here, that's it. So what is the first red flag you will look for in an inherited study? When you inherit a study, when you are doing your due diligence, when you get the data, what is the red flag that you look for? And please use the colors, the pointers, the tools over here. Yeah, protocol deviations. Okay, let's see what else.
The
And
tool you
protocol
can find on
deviations.
the left side, and click on the T in the box, please. Click anywhere then on the whiteboard and you can start writing.
Yeah, okay, flat outcome. All right, data looks too good to be true. True. What else? That's it? No other red flags? Yeah, poor protocol versus intent to treat analysis results. Okay. Perfect enrollment compared with plan. Yes, agreed. What else? For TMF, okay. Do I have access to audit trail of the data sets? All right.
That's very important, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
In fact, yeah, there are several answers already kind of can be categorized too good to be true. Yeah, so where there is a
Right.
lack of variability of real world. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, protocol deviation very high, or I would also say protocol deviation rate very low. That would be a red flag for me.
Mm.
No? Um, Anybody else? So yes, when you get the data set and when you inherit the data, and if you find that okay, the enrollment has gone completely, compared to plan, you don't have any dropouts. What about dropouts? What about screen failures? What about the safety signals that you get? Okay, so vendor that I have challenge with, I can't read properly. Okay. Challenges with that I don't trust. Okay. Are there sites or countries with a major difference in AE reporting? All right.
Mm.
Yes. Yes. So these are the signals and red flags that you would look for in an inherited study. And the way to do it is not in the data room. The way to do it is actually drill down into the data sets. And as we said earlier, the data could be really voluminous. So let's go to the next slide and see how we can use a structured scoring of the inherited clinical risk, using the 7 domain framework. The 7 domain framework that we saw earlier, the data provenance and integrity. And this is by far, the most important when you're looking at large volumes of data, when you're looking at clinical data, when you're looking at the reliability of the data. You need to ensure that the provenance, that the integrity of the data is intact, whether the data has been or is it traceable. And that is where your audit trails also come into place. And just looking at tables, just looking at volumes of data will not give you this. You need to use technology, and we will see when Artem demonstrates in the case studies that how technology will differentiate and bring forward the issues that are inherent in your data. You will just looking at a tabular format, you will not be able to identify that. Also, how do we evaluate this risk? And according to ICAG 6R3, the risk can be evaluated using what is the impact, what is the probability, and if there are any controls that are already available to mitigate the risk. So when you're looking at the data, when you're looking at all the risk within the data, you also need to look at it from that standpoint. That okay, for example, let me give you an example. If there are vital signs, and you have multiple centers within the study, all giving you 120 by 80, then you know that there is something wrong in that data. Okay, so similarly, you need to check for signals within the data provenance. You need to check for traceability of the data. You need to check at site level patterns and the recruitment speed. So if there is a site that has recruited almost 100% of subjects within a really short period of time, that you would question how did they do it, whereas the other sites are taking 3 months or 2 months or 5 months to do that. So when you're comparing data, when you're looking at data in a holistic manner across all sites, across data sets, so within a data set, within a site versus across a data set and across a site, it makes a huge difference in the way you can identify the signals. Similarly, most of these signals will point towards sponsor oversight and vendor control. And that is when while doing the due diligence, while identifying the risk, or while evaluating the risk, you need to make sure what steps have the sponsor taken in order to ensure, that whatever has been delegated to a third party, or whatever has been outsourced to another vendor, how have they kept their oversight? And we all know that ICH E6R3 now requires, that the sponsor and the investigator, even if the investigator has outsourced activities and tasks to third parties or vendors, it is the investigator's responsibility to first of all evaluate those vendors, to identify and make sure that they are capable of doing it, and then to have stringent oversight. And the regulations go further and say that, okay, if a sponsor has appointed a CRO and the CRO has then outsourced the activities, it is still the sponsor that is responsible for the outsourced activities of the CRO as well. So if the CRO has 3 third parties or 4 third parties, and if they have outsourced to another third parties, the sponsor is still deemed to be responsible. And so, how would you ensure all this while doing your due diligence? Because, as Artem said, due diligence activities are time boxed. You will get your inherited study. You have the pressure of time on you, and you have the pressure of the financial pressure behind you as well. So, all in all, we need to have a system, a structure in place whereby these risks can be evaluated in a smart manner, which will give you, the right signals to look at, so that ultimately, when you actually imbibe whatever study you are, or when you take charge of that study, you don't regret it. Okay, Atom. I think,
Yep.
yeah.
So thank you, Shanaz. So let us take a look on the kind of the engine of the which converts the messy and unstructured information into something really easy to be used for decision making. And for that, there is a kind of just follow the lines I will guide you through. So usually we're dealing with 7 systems on average per clinical trial, speaking about phase 2, phase 3, EDC, CTMS, IVRS, lab data, as I mentioned, sometimes wearables as well, genetic information, and all that is the inputs for our analysis. Then we're defining the standardized risk indicators and performance indicators, yeah, which covers that what ICH, for example, kind of prescribes. Patient safety, data integrity, reliability of the results are part of this KRI list, part of this KPI list. Then we're running ELSER unsupervised centralized statistical monitoring, where every value is compared to every value. So patients with patients, sites with sites, countries with countries. And by means of that, we are looking for suspicious outliers, for suspicious patterns, which are, in fact, will this kind of show some critical issues or risks we haven't thought about in the, for example, in the initial stage. And then we use scoring, FMEA scoring, borrowed from engineering, failure mode, and effects analysis, which is in fact is very good in terms of the categorizing the severity of the risk and putting it in some sort of structured format, yeah, for the later decision. So and later on, kind of showing that in all concise, for example, concise overview, presenting this all in the form of findings and scores. So what does it in fact covers? It covers, of course, initially patient safety, patient population, compliance to the protocol, and oversight. Again, these are domains which Nas mentioned, but these are domains also which really matters the most. They matters the most for management. They matters the most for study endpoints and for data accuracy. So and then we use also very straightforward scoring technique, so to say, again showing the categorizing, so to say, the issues and applying risk priority numbers, which is very common in the RBKM world, and deriving, so to say, this, so presenting it to decision makers. So let us take a look on the real world case study for how it works in the real world. And for that, I'm just diving into one of kind of starting with the one real case study. Again, based on anonymized information, but the data is all kind of derived from the past experience. And here you go. So there is a company, let's name it Cardenova. So again, it's a anonymized name, but for the sake of the case study, we just use this name. It's a cardiovascular company with a clinical trial of a phase 3, and large pharma is kind of addressing the acquisition. Big pharma, and they also kind of prognosing that the launch of the new drug, so to say, will happen in 2027. Kind of the mood is very optimistic. Molecule shows good results in interim analysis, so everybody is very excited. So when we looked in the clinical trial data and presented the report, then the findings and the scoring, so to say, were quite worrisome. So first of all, we noticed right away that the protocol deviation rate was quite significant. So meaning that most probably also the regulators, AMA or FDA, will point to that as a compliance issues. There were numerous breaches in the inclusion and exclusion criteria, particularly for 4 sites, which in fact, again, enrolled too optimistically, so to say, and the patients were not really fitting to the initial inclusion criteria. So there were some patterns in a weak oversight by CRO, and that's, by the way, very echoes to the poll we had in the prior. So that's one of the element which is, again, pharma is very worried about, and that's actually what here happened. There were some other major issues, so to say, with data management, where there was quite a number of overdue queries, meaning that, in fact, that it could be a very long tail of closing those queries, and the timelines which are prognosed, in fact, are very optimistic, and they should be corrected. There were also issues with patient population. At certain regions, there were under recruitment noticed, and that's in fact kind of drops a shadow on the timelines as well. particularly again that the study will not finish with planned enrollment time, and that the study database lock will be delayed as well. So all this, so that also strengthens at the end of the day statistical power in the analysis. So after the review of all these findings, sponsor has decided to correct the study timelines launch, and that also impacted their prognosis on the future revenues, and those unknowns, so to say, were incorporated into the negotiation process. So let us dive into the next case study. Shanaz, the stage is yours.
Right, thank you, Artem. Okay, so let's call this company Oncolumen, which is an oncology-based company with a completed phase 2B, and the dossier looks really ready until, of course, we look into the data. And once, what are we seeing when we look into the data? So targeted subjects were 250, enrolled were 250, 3 countries, 8 sites. Okay, and when you look at the findings, the data inaccuracy is on the top of the list, where the data speaks about anomalies within vital signs and mixed lab units. What do we mean by that? So when we have, when you, for example, as I, the example that I gave you, if you have multiple patients with the same type of vitals, you kind of start wondering whether they have actually measured it or whether they have just recorded it, you know, fabricated it, just added it. You won't realize that unless and until you see the data in its entirety. In case of mixed lab units, same parameter, different labs, different types of instruments used to measure it, different units, and then it becomes like a mix of issues. You are not able to evaluate that particular data, and that is another important sign of, you know, the data health, basically. Study endpoints. If you're missing primary endpoints and secondary endpoints, then your data reliability definitely, and your study evaluability is at a very high risk. And in this case, that's what we saw. There were missing primary endpoints at 2 sites. 3 countries, 8 sites. 2 out of 8 sites, huge number. And this, you know, will definitely have an impact on the power of the study. Protocol compliance and oversights. So there were protocol deviations. The rate of protocol deviation was near the thresholds. There were ICF deviations, you know, but there were low deviations compared to the missing primary endpoints, which directly affects the study evaluability, and compared to, you know, the criticality of whether the data is genuine, whether the data is actually collected from patients, or whether the data is fabricated. That you know, brings a very, very high red flag. And in this case, in patient safety, there was no risk identified in this case, but the verdict was, yes, the study was complete, the dossier was there, but the data wasn't clean, and the data, we don't even know whether it was genuine. And that single data integrity signal can actually stall the entire registration even before the dossier is filed. And this is where doing a thorough due diligence, you know, using technology, and a thorough due diligence, looking at the overall data, definitely helps.
Thank you, Shanaz. So yeah, let's see how it looks under the hood. This is frankly my favorite slide. Yeah, well, various type of issues which again is visible only when you apply certain methodologies. Yeah. There are the real site inconsistencies and real kind of quiet data errors sitting into the large data sets. So each data set really is tested again against the model, and therefore again we could notice certain issues there. So let's take a look on the isolated errors. Yeah, so these are classical example. This is a classical example, for example, respiratory rate here. Yeah, we see that most of the measurements are within confident intervals for the whole study. The baseline shows that where is the majority of values across all the centers, and there are some kind of incompatible with life jumps here and there. Again, meaning that this may be an issue to consider, to discuss if the volume of that type of issues is large, and they might question about kind of the quality of data management, for example, quality of edit checks configured, the different issues with the units within the different maybe regions, or could hide this. In the second example, there is not one arrow, it's a whole site is drifting. So we notice that again, the baseline of whole study is actually showing the range of values, and the site, one site 0201, in fact drifts, and you notice also that certain range of volume kind of values are outside of the of all the whole the study. So again, what does it mean? It means also that site presumably had some sort of issues with measurements or with local lab, and that's really requires a much deeper dive into the data, maybe together with data management, medical monitor, understanding the root cause of that. Statistics can also give a very simple overview, so to say, showing the distribution of different values. And here an example, alkaline phosphatase versus reference. So the reference is orange distribution. That means also that all the sites are with kind of distributed within these ranges, and it also forms kind of classical normal distribution. Although the skewedness of data, in fact, for one particular site shows that there is a systematic issue of collecting this type of lab parameters. And again, the root causes usually could be connected with the type of the measurement, with the local lab, with the lab kits which are used, and that's also kind of immediately gives a signal to investigate further on. So statistics can really tell a cold story, so to say, without any emotions, and provides really kind of the reference values. Yeah, so where you could compare to present the outlier ratio, so to say, and then provides a kind of defines what is noise and what is the trend in the study. highlighting, in fact, again, important drifts from maybe the original idea, from an original inspiration into the reality. So you investigated together with data managers, together with medical monitor. You decide whether you can trust the data before you close a deal, and then kind of mathematics can assist you with that, but humans really can judge at the end of the day, and that's where the partnership really emerges. So it's not a kind of accusing exercise. Is more building the dialogue with your partner and understanding again what happened there, understanding what type of corrective actions needed to be done after the deal is closed. Yeah, so back to you, Shanaz.
Yes, yes. So, how does it impact us? How does identifying all these issues, on if your data is not clean, if the study that you inherited has a lot of issues with data, like how we demonstrated in those two case studies, what does it translate into? How does it impact? The most important impact is your timeline, because at the end of the day, like Artem said, you need to have a dialogue with your partner. You need to identify how you are going to correct that data. And the correction and the corrective actions will depend upon the intensity of the issues that you are facing. The intensity and the details of the issues that have surfaced at the time when you were doing your due diligence. So if there was data fraud or unresolved integrity signals, that could really have a detrimental effect. If you have enrollment shortfalls and delays, that is going to actually delay, you know, the study completion. That is going to, you might want to, ultimately you might either have to accept the data, put in corrective actions, and then make sure that the data is clean, etc. Or it might also turn into a fact that you might have to redo the entire study. So depends upon the type of issues that are identified, depend upon the type of the cleanliness of the data at the time you inherit it. It would either push the date out, which if you see here, you know, you can see that the launch date, earlier the launch date was here, now the launch date has been pushed out. And every day of delay or in a launch of a drug actually translates into millions of dollars. So at the end of the day, it is imperative that whatever data you're collecting, whatever study you're conducting is appropriate. Otherwise, it will directly impact, not only financially, it impacts on the subject safety, it impacts on the entire, progress of the deal, basically. So even a near ready dossier, if you have a near ready dossier, it could still have a detrimental effect on how and when it is launched, based on what red flags you are identifying at the time of your due diligence. And the timeline shift definitely cascades into financial market shares, assumptions, etc. Okay.
Thank you. So let us summarize. So we covered a lot of ground today. Let's imagine what you need to take away from this webinar, and to remember for the next your kind of M&A deal, what you will be guiding or analyzing. So if we could summarize into very simple, straightforward takeaways, one is that look past the curated data room and the misconduct signals, the inspection exposure, is actually what decide your post-deal cost. Yeah, so that's what in fact kind of the hidden risks are really kind of incorporated into the data and waiting for being uncovered. Yeah, Shanaz, number 2, if you.
Yeah. Also, then implement, the use of risk scores, implement the use of technology, implement, divide them into we have, as we have said, the 7 domains, you know, to identify if there are red flags, if there are risks, if there are integrity issues. So use a structured format, to do your risk based analysis of the data. And once you identify that, it you will be able to structurally, using a structured format, you will be able to put the right corrective actions in place in order to get your or order to reach your goal.
And 3 is actually to resolve every unknown before a commitment happens. Yeah, before a deal signed. So when you see kind of moderate, high, or unknown kind of risks clustering together, that might be a red flag for a deal, or yellow flag. Even again, and being aware about this type of kind of risks makes you stronger in the deal, much more probable to succeed later on. So that's where focused review and remediation plan becomes a very essential elements. Yeah, and these type of plans could be already incorporated into the deal structure. Yeah, into the before the final signatures happens, not after. Yeah, so you want to be aware about these hidden risks in advance. Yes, score the risks, look into the past room, close unknowns. I believe that's where the most important areas are hidden. And with that, I think we have a couple of minutes left for Q&A.
There are some questions in the chat already that we can answer here. We received them during your presentation, Artem.
Yes, so I see a question about the audit trail data. Audit trail data may also be rather important for acceptance of the data quality. And I think that Shanaz mentioned audit trail review. That's an emerging, very essential element of the quality assessment. Audit trail review focuses on such issues like frequent change of the data, unauthorized changes of the data, elements which again really can be kind of red flags as well right away and will require analysis. Yeah, so that's a very important element. And getting access to audit trail from the recording systems, using the audit trail for analysis is essential element of that. I don't know, Shanaz, do you want to add something?
Shanaz, you're muted.
Yes, got you. So the audit trail data definitely gives you insights into, who has entered it, what has happened, when has it been changed. If you see a data point where you see continuous changes to that data point, multiple changes by different people, then you definitely raise a question as to what is going on. So if you see a data point which is entered much later than the patient visit, again you raise a question as to what is going on. So looking at the audit trail, you can actually build a story backwards. basically, and try and understand how the data has reached that particular point. So yes, the audit trail data is very important, and now even the regulators, the US FDA as well as the EMEA regulators, are looking at audit trail data, and the ICH E6R3 has an entire section on data governance. So looking at the audit trail data is becoming an extremely important trail, particularly with the fact that there are, like Artem you mentioned, there are so many variables. So now data is not just coming from your EDC. The data is coming from multiple sources. Earlier, it used to be just what was entered by the site into the EDC and the labs. Now you have variables, you have different other systems, you have e-diaries where the patient is entering the data, etc. So looking at the audit trails at all the different systems is or does give you a fair understanding of the integrity of the data quality.
Thank you very much, Shinas. Thank you, Artem. Artem, I know you have to leave now for another customer presentation. You're excused. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, before we close the session, I would like to introduce our new digital training, AI Essentials in Clinical Trials, a 70-minute self-study training on how to apply AI in clinical trials with a risk-based approach and in compliance with GCP expectations. AI oversight training is an expected requirement in clinical trials. And to register, please just visit the MyRBQM website. If you contact me at academy@cyntegrity.com by next Tuesday, you will receive a 20% discount. Good. Then last but not least, let's quickly check what's coming up next on our event stage. On Wednesday, the 17th of June, the 46th episode of our mindsON RBQM workshop with Johan and Keith, followed by the Act on Quality by Design episode 16 on Wednesday, the 24th of June. So we would love to see you again at one of these upcoming free sessions. Thank you all very much for joining today. I hope this session was helpful for you, and see you again soon in our next webinar then. Have a wonderful rest of the day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much again, Shinas.
Thank you very much.
And that was
A
it from our
pleasure.
side. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.